Welcome, my friends, back to Beyond the Well, where forgotten histories and untold legends awaken. I never expected to find that well, hidden deep in the woods behind my house. But when I touched its sacred water, I saw more than my own reflection. I saw another world. A world shaped by light and shadow, by heroes and tyrants, by choices that still echo through time. Join me as I uncover the stories of Aldarion that lie beyond the well. Mohrvanna, Harbinger of Destruction, Episode 4, The Child of the Abyss. The woods never got quiet like this. Syris stood beneath the boughs of a twisted pine and black-barked oak. Her son pressed close to her breast, silent as stone. Not a bird sang, not a creature stirred. Even the wind seemed to avoid this place now. Mohrvanna had been born beneath thunder and blood, fire and shadow. But in the days that followed, the storms didn't clear. They just changed shape. The skies remained dark, not from clouds, but from a strange heaviness that blanketed this section of the forest like smoke. The trees near Coy'era's Holler began to twist unnaturally, bark flaking away like old skin. Animals gave the place a wide berth. Even the insects avoided it. Mohrvanna did not cry, not even once. He stared at Syris with eyes that were calm and far too knowing. They shimmered with a dull violet hue, like moonlight passing through old wine. He never cooed or babbled. He just watched, observed. And Syris, once Coy'era, and now Syris Vealthara, fully given to her rebirth, did not find it strange. She bathed him in cold water of the forest springs and wrapped him in furs woven with old runes. She whispered stories of pain and power, and of the light that had failed her, and the shadow that had saved her. She told him about Aldarion, but only in mockery. "You were never meant for the cradle," she whispered one night, tracing the ridges of his tiny fingers. "You are meant for the throne of ash." Even in his infancy, the Nexus seemed to move around him. The ruins of Coy'era's hollow grew darker, the forest bent more steeply, and the rituals Syris had once struggled to perform now came easily, instinctively. When she bled into the stones, the ground responded. When she sang, the shadows danced, and always Mohrvanna watched. But it was not enough. Vorath's voice had not returned since the birth. She waited for it, longed for it, but only silence echoed back. And so she turned inward, turning Coy'era's Holler into a cathedral of shadow, a place of learning, of experimentation. She desperately wanted to reach across the vast chasm that separated the world of Aldarion and the underworld. She had seen it. She knew it existed. She knew there must be a way to breach its barriers. She began playing with animals, broken ones, a fox caught in a trap or a raven with a broken wing. She carved runes into the soil, burned sigils into bark. She whispered the language Hagris had taught her and added it to what the Nexus whispered from her dreams. When she cut open the fox and laid its organs upon the altar stone, she felt just the barest flicker of life, a soul, and a possibility of a gate. She pressed her fingers into the blood and called out across the veil, "Let one from the second layer come," she whispered. "Let it wear what I have offered." The body twitched. The fox's eyes flickered white, and then went still. It was not a full possession, not yet, but it had almost been. She stood over the corpse, trembling. Mohrvanna had laid nearby, still bundled, but watching. His eyes never closed. He had not looked away. "You saw that, didn't you?" she said softly. He blinked once. The wind shifted, and for just a moment, she felt it again, the faintest trace of approval. He was nearly 6 years old when she took him back to the ruins of Delvin's Reach. Syris walked with him through the forest and swamp back on the road where she had been born. Something called her there. In visions, she had seen that village burn, Raiders came who cared for nothing but riches and disregarded all else. Syris and Mohrvanna came at night, cloaked in mist. The city had never been rebuilt after the fire, just abandoned. The few of its inhabitants that had survived had now left, and it was desolate and barren. The prison, she saw, was not much to look upon, much, much smaller than she remembered. Its east wing was blackened stone, its cells crumbled and empty. Wild growth had claimed much of the structure, ivy strangling the old bars and roots bursting through the walls. But the bones of the prison remained. It was still a place of pain, of memory, and now a catalyst. Syris walked to the place where Eris had died. She touched the ground upon which she had heard something, the gentle movement of something now completely unfamiliar but not forgotten. As her fingers touched the crumbling and charred stone where her mother had ascended, she felt a bit of warmth, a hint of what had been, for the briefest second, a small sliver of her mother's love and unstoppable faith in Aldarion. It brought Syris to her knees. But then she reflected on the harsh realities she had been dealt, and a coldness gripped her heart. She stood abruptly and turned to see her son looking at her quizzically. Immediately she stood, avoiding his piercing gaze. "Come, we have much to do." She stepped out through the ruined prison gates and toward the graveyard at the edge of town. In visions she had seen something that had held her mind, a passage, a tear in the fabric that holds worlds apart, and movement across that border. There at the center of the graveyard was an old mausoleum, fairly small in size. Syris went to open the rotten door and it fell off its hinges. The inside reeked of rot, an earthy smell that mixed with decomposed flesh. She felt it, though, a hum, a pulse. There in the center of the room was an altar upon which a casket lay. "Come, child. Help your mother make way." She motioned to the casket, and the two of them pushed and shoved the stone box off the altar. It fell with a crash, and Syris immediately felt a surge of energy from the altar where the casket had been laid. "A gateway," she muttered. Mohrvanna watched intently. "A perfect place to whisper between worlds." They cleared the rubble away, all the while Syris whispering words, oaths, bindings under her breath. Once they cleared, she turned and said, "We need to find an offering." They had caught a wolf pup. It had wandered from its home. It had come to them willingly, half emaciated. Syris fed and watered the pup, and the little creature nuzzled close and fell asleep, exhausted from its days of wandering. Mohrvanna felt the bond from the pup, and it was odd. It set him ill at ease. He shifted away from the creature. Syris held the pup close and said, "The strongest magic comes from the strongest bonds, and the strongest bonds must come from willing participants." Mohrvanna didn't fully understand, but patiently watched. Night came, and the three of them, Syris, her son, and the pup, walked to the mausoleum and the altar. Syris brought out her cursed black blade and cut herself, watching the blood in her hands, and began writing symbols and runes across the altar. The wolf pup watched and whimpered as it sat obediently next to Mohrvanna. The altar began to hum. A slight rumble and a mist of fog began to form around it. A rhythmic chant became audible, and on cue, Mohrvanna picked up the pup and brought it to the altar, placing it down. The pup cowered and looked for relief, but Syris approached with blade. The motion was swift, and the pup let out one last whine, then went quiet. Syris chanted the words louder and louder. A crack rang out, something fell, and with a rush, the pup jerked and came back to life with a glow in its eyes. Mohrvanna felt a surge of energy and heard his mother cackle in delight. Then the wolf pup tried to stand, but faltered. A spirit had taken hold, but it was weak, barely tethered. But it lived inside the beast's broken frame. For a few heartbeats, it looked at Syris with hate, then at Mohrvanna with recognition. The child stood. The wolf pup whimpered and lowered its head. "Ah, you see?" Syris whispered. "Even the damned recognize their king." Later that night, Vorath's voice returned. "You have opened the gate." Syris fell to her knees.
But it is not wide enough yet.
She looked up into the darkness. How?
Blood alone is not the key. Blood and will and oath.
The voice faded. Syris turned and saw the wolf pup still lying on the altar. She gently walked over and placed her hand on its cold body. She set her jaw and grit her teeth in determination to somehow breach this veil and open a gate between worlds. Years passed. Where once a single clearing had housed rituals and whispers, now dozens of stone circles dotted the woods. The trees bent unnaturally, bowed by invisible winds. No birds sang, no animals lingered unless drawn by the Nexus, and none left unchanged. Mohrvanna, now 17, had grown tall and pale. He had long dark hair and violet-gray eyes that pierced like knives. His presence was unmistakable. By this point, he had surpassed his mother in raw connection to the Nexus, but Syris Vealthara remained its priestess. Together they had spent years experimenting, first on animals, then on broken men, drawn into the woods by dreams and illusions. Most ended in failure. Even with elaborate bindings and layered enchantments, the second veil, the boundary between the first and second layers of hell, remained intact. At best, they summoned flickers of consciousness. Most demons came and went within moments, unable to cling to the shattered hosts they were offered. "Why?" Syris muttered again and again in frustration. Her hair wild, her fingers ink-stained and bloody from another failed ritual. "Why won't they stay?" Mohrvanna watched her from the shadows of the altar chamber. The mausoleum had changed, expanded by sorcery and decay. Roots now grew in the walls, bones had been stacked like trophies. It was no longer a burial place, it was now a dark temple. "They cannot hold," he murmured, "not without something more." "More?" Syris snapped. "We've given them everything, blood, name, oaths." "It is not enough. You yourself have said they must be willing. We offer bodies, but they are already broken. We need a healthy host and a willing sacrifice." Syris paused. 2 entities. She hadn't thought of that before. Mohrvanna stepped close to the altar, where the most recent vessel, once a man, now a limp husk, lay still. "We have taken life. We have stolen breath. But the gate does not open for theft. It opens for offering." He looked up at her, something dawning in his eyes. "A willing gift. This is the key, and a healthy host." She stared at him, her lips trembling. "Who?" she said bitterly. "Who would willingly give themselves to the darkness?" Mohrvanna said nothing, but his gaze shifted downward to the altar, and then up to her. Realization spread between them like oil catching flame. "No," she whispered. "That cannot be." "You said it yourself," he replied in a calm voice. "The greater the sacrifice, the greater the tear. If the offering is both willing and pure, you would see me dead." Her voice cracked, not with fear, but something more closely aligned with awe. "You taught me this path," he said. "You called me Harbinger. You said Vorath's dominion begins with me. But it can't, it won't begin without you, the Mother." They stood in silence. The candles dimmed, the altar pulsed. Then Syris stepped forward and laid her hand on his cheek. "You are more than I ever dreamed," she whispered, "and more than I will ever see." Outside, the wind changed. It was nearly time. This night, the sky was wrong. Above the mausoleum, the moons of Aldarion, twin silver eyes, slid behind one another in perfect darkness. This rare celestial event, winter's depth, came but once every decade. Syris had waited for it like a holy day, and now it was here. She dressed in the robes of her birthright, not in the white linens of the abbey, but black velvet lined with red runes. Her hair was bound with twine and bone, her face painted with ash and blood. She kissed Mohrvanna's forehead and said nothing more. Together they led a panther cub to the altar. It had been Mohrvanna's gift to her months ago, a creature found injured, trembling in the frost. They had nursed it, brought it back to life. Syris had sung to it, cradled it. The cub slept beside them, grew beside them, trusted them. Now it waited, unaware, its silver eyes watching. Syris knelt beside it. Mohrvanna drew the binding circle. Above them, the moons vanished, one sliding perfectly behind the other. The world held its breath. Syris climbed onto the altar and laid back, arms outstretched. "I am not the heir," she said to her son, voice trembling. "I am your gate." Mohrvanna didn't cry, he didn't speak, but he did kneel. He placed one hand upon her chest and the other upon the cub's brow. Then he began to chant. The altar began to bleed dark light. Runes ignited across the walls. Shadows bent and screamed. The air turned sharp as broken glass. Syris closed her eyes and whispered, "I give myself freely." The blade ran across her throat. That was all the veil needed. A soundless crack split the room, like reality tearing in half. Darkness poured from the ceiling like a fountain of water, and into that abyss her soul leapt. Her body arched once, fingers clawing the air, then went still. The altar ignited in red flame. The cub screamed, not like a cat, like a thing remembering that it had been a god. Its body jerked, twisted. For a moment it went limp. Then it rose, eyes glowing a deep yellow, teeth gleaming with an impossible light. Smoke poured from its mouth. Mohrvanna stepped back, awe flooding his face. It walked toward him, not on instinct, but with purpose. Its gait was graceful, yet unnatural. The panther circled him once, then sat by his side. Syris's body remained on the altar, eyes closed, peaceful. Her soul was gone. She had torn the veil. She had given the second hell a door. Mohrvanna placed a hand on the demon panther's head and whispered its name. Vealthara. The creature purred, a sound like grinding metal, and its eyes blinked once in answer. And far below, in the second layer of hell, 1,000 demons howled in unison, for a gate had indeed been opened, and Aldarion had begun to bleed. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for coming with me beyond the well. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking, following, or subscribing. And if you have a moment, I would love a review. Your feedback truly makes a difference. If you want to dive deeper into the well, visit beyondthewell.net for show notes, transcripts, maps, character descriptions, and much, much more. And until next time, keep seeking, keep dreaming, and keep telling your story.